Yeah, McQueen here. Hey, so you see, I got the transmission there, right? Here soon we're gonna get up under that. We're gonna get up under there, put this whole thing, in. I don't know the last time you ever thought about a 65-year-old man lifting up the transmission. Got my bike, got her all jacked up, right? So I'm gonna tell you a little story about that van and that transmission because it's important for the DMZ, right? That old van, we're going to make her up a little bit. You'll work with me on it. Right now I need to get that transmission working because it's been a problem. I'm going to give me a sit on the motorcycle real quick and tell this story because it's important to know. Yeah. So for those of you that didn't know or haven't been paying attention, the real McQueen, Danny McQ. Of course, Navy, combat, special operations, rescue swimmer, door gunner, been to war, did the whole thing, mine watch, all that, pulled bodies from the ocean. Hey, hero, right? I got the medals to prove it. I told the guy one time we were in a meeting on a Black Hawk helicopter. I said, I tell you what, let's throw the degrees and the medals on the wall and see who gets the first damn vote. Yeah, well, you know who that is. It's Danny McQ. Anyway, so the van, right? I was working VC-25B, Air Force One, out in Seattle, flying the flight simulator, right? You're probably looking at the only guy that did a barrel roll with the presidential flight simulator, right? Because my job is to test the avionics system. My job as the lead engineer with 10 teams of engineers that I had to collaborate on the testing, on the engineering of the software, of the hardware, everything that goes into a flight deck. That's my job. That was me. Okay, it's not me now. I left that. And I got it. Yeah, if you look in the news, $5 billion program that is over budget, over schedule. I got that. I left that. Okay. There's one thing I don't do very well is tolerate incompetence and tolerate, mismanagement, and tolerate dysfunction, and tolerate, when it's broke, it's broke. If I can't fix it, I'm moving on. And I encourage you to do the same thing. Now my van, on the other hand, she's broke. But she broke years ago, and you may remember when COVID first hit in Washington. I was in Washington, flying back and forth from San Antonio to Washington, and we were working on the avionics, computers and systems and new integrations, and putting it together in the flight simulator before it goes to the airplane, right? So that we can test everything. And COVID hit. And everybody shut down. They shut down the gyms, they shut down hotels, they shut down everything. But when you're on Air Force One, it's national security. And so when it's a national security, you got to go to work. And so, I went to work 7 days a week, probably, 12, 14-hour days. But what else was there to do, right? Fly the flight simulator, stack up a little cash, work on the avionics systems. But on the break time, I took my van and we went to the mountains. And we, sometimes I would work a little virtual, do the meetings virtual and stuff, and I'd go up to the mountains out in Washington and I'd camp out. Well, my radiator had developed a little drip, right? From the cooling lines that were coming from the transmission. Now, of course, to me, I got a bag full of tools, got everything. Usually I keep everything in my van, right? If I'm not on my motorcycle, I keep my van nearby in case I need to work on my motorcycle or if I need to work on my van. Now, going out there, I'll just tell you, the water pump, she went out as we were driving her out there, from Texas out to Washington, so that I could camp in her, and she's my mini home. That's what I call her. And so I had to I pulled into an AutoZone, I think it was, and bought a water pump, changed it right there in the parking lot, right? You guys look at this 65-year-old man, I'm going to tell you some stories. Anyway, so let's get before I run out of too much juice on this little show. So I'm not unfamiliar with working on cars. You know, I've been working on cars since I was a teenager. I mean, in the day, you didn't have the money to pay somebody to do it. You went and bought a tool, got a book, and asked for help. We didn't even have YouTube, but now you got YouTube. And so, you know, I've ripped apart, put back together my old 66 GTO, you know, all of my motorcycles, everything, you know, my 80 Corvette. And we're going to work on that project too, because there's a story about the divorce on that one and how it got just destroyed out in the sun for a couple of years. So I had a little drip on the transmission cooling lines that go to the radiator here. And I'll probably show you some videos and stuff later as we get ready to change this thing, change the transmission. Because I just dropped it 2 weeks ago, and like you probably noticed the post, I had Henry, an 80-year-old man down in San Antonio, South Side. He rebuilt it for me. I always like having the old guys do stuff because they know what the hell they're doing, right? Anyway, so I'm at this campsite. Got a woodpecker out there. I'm at the campsite, and while I'm chilling, I'm like, I'm going to tighten up the cooling lines because they're dripping. Well, when I did that, instantly the internal seal ruptured for the cooling lines, and all the radiator fluid, water, went into the transmission lines and flooded the transmission with water. Well, you know I'm a fast thinker, right? Do more faster so others may live. So what do I have? I have myself in the middle of nowhere on a mountain in Washington, and there is now water in my transmission. Well, instantly, I started opening up the pan on the transmission so I could drain that water as quick as I could to get it out, right? And so I did that. I ripped apart the pan, drained all of the fluid, all of the water, and so all of the fluid and water from the radiator and the transmission were gone. And so now here I am. Now mind you, I do have AAA. But, you know, I'm kind of hard-headed sometimes, and I'm like, well, I'm not in a pickle yet. I don't need my AAA. And besides, what am I going to do? Tow it to somewhere so somebody can work on it? I could tell you the story about when I had somebody work on stuff. Okay, my brand new 85 Camaro, and the dealer screwed up the intake manifold because they were changing a fuel filter and they cross-threaded it and gas went everywhere. So I'm not really a proponent of letting people work on my stuff, especially my motorcycle. But anyway, so it was a little late, and I said, well, I'm going to plot this course. Well, I was 15 miles from town, had no secondary mode of transportation, didn't have my bike with me, didn't have my motorcycle with me. All I had was my van. And so Sunday was the next day, and I said, well, I knew that there was a town about 15 miles away, and I'm pretty sure they got a Walmart. They got one of those everywhere. And so I formulated a plan that I was going to hike into town the next day. I was going to buy what I needed to put an external transmission cooler on it and get all the fluid that I needed to refill the transmission and see if she would dry out. And so I got up bright and early the next day, and I started hiking into town on a Sunday. And I'm going to tell you, oh yeah, I was talking to God. Okay, you know I'm a faith person, and I'm like, hey God, help me out of this one. Because you know what? I'm going to tell you many stories about what God has done to help me out of this one. Okay, man, I've been knocked down, and so this was a knockdown moment. And typically in knockdown moments, I like to test my get up. Okay, a lot of people say test your giddy up. I test my can I even get up off of this one, or do I just lay back and cry? And so, let me get up for a moment. So here we are. And I get close to town, and on a Sunday, there's a bus, a city bus. I forget the name of the town. I could research it and give it to you. And so I go on the bus, and I'm like, hey, dude, do you go by a Walmart? He said, yeah. And I said, yeah, that's where I'm going to go. How much is the fare? And he says, like $1.20 or something. All I had were 20s, right? And so I said, well, you have change? He said, no. I said, well, I'm going to give you this 20. Are you going to come back out this way? Because in my mind, all of a sudden I had formulated the plan that I'm also going to buy me a bicycle. And I'm going to take that bicycle and I'm going to ride back to the van. Because I know it's going to be a long ride and a long walk. And it'd probably be dark. And it's going to take me an hour or so over at Walmart. And so the dude said, yeah, I can bring you back out here. Because we make this route, every hour. I'm like, okay, that's the plan. And so we rode in and we talked along the way, and his daughter was in Austin going to college, and I was like, this is pretty cool. And so anyway, he dropped me off at Walmart. Next to Walmart in the plaza was an AutoZone. Went over to AutoZone, got me a transmission cooler, put it so I could, bypass that transmission altogether. I was like, I'm gonna plug the damn holes for the transmission lines on the radiator. And so that was the plan. And so got what I needed at the Walmart next door. Got all the transmission fluid I needed. I think I got like 8 quarts. Bought me a 21 speed mountain bike. And sure enough, went out there to the bus stop. Bus guy came by probably about 15 minutes after that. Had all that stuff, loaded up my bike on the front rack of the city bus. He rode me all the way out there. Now I'm going to tell you, when I was walking in and at the corner that the bus was, he showed up at the time I reached that corner. Now, if you don't believe in God, I'm going to tell you what. When the bus shows up after you've been walking 15 miles and you're heading in to get stuff for your broken ass van that's up in the mountain, God's watching, baby. Just letting you know. And so, if you let him, he'll pick you up too. He probably carried me a lot. Oh shit, I forgot about the dog that tried to attack me on that walk too. And I wasn't carrying a gun or anything. That's when I started carrying my 380. But anyway, so I'm back on the bus. He's heading back out to the dropout point. And I'm like, yeah, he's going to drop me off. I got, a couple bags of stuff. I got it tied to me. I think I was carrying like a grocery bag or whatnot to carry all this kind of stuff now, right? And that's a good thing. Strapped it on like my old newspaper route. I would put newspapers, strap it on each side, and then I would throw newspapers when I rode my bicycle as a kid, right? I was, 12, 13. Anyway. So as we were getting close to the end of the story, we get on the bicycle, we ride out to the campsite out in the mountains, and it's, it's starting to get a little edgy on light, right? And so we reach the campsite. Good news, right? Good news. It's dark. I'm not going to do anything. Monday's the next day. There's nobody out here. I got the materials. And so, long story short, the next day, I put everything together. I put the fluid in the transmission. I put some water in the radiator. No leaks. Put that cooler on it, on the transmission. And we drove out, right? I cleaned up because I was greasy as hell. But we drove out. And so, that transmission has been holding up since we drove out from the mountain. And then about 6 months ago, we've got it here, we're in Texas, we're going back and forth. She started doing a little jerky. And I was like, I'm going to have to drop that transmission, rebuild it again, because I knew something had to be wrong. Well, I'm not going to tell you, but Henry, boy, he worked that transmission. She was all bad. I mean, there was water in there still and everything. I'm going to tell you, this old Dodge transmission, that's why we're getting rebuilt. And she's the DMZ Communication Center. Hope you enjoyed the story. Danny Mac, the real McQueen. Check it.